Maybe you were chatting with a guy online and things seem to be going really well, but then suddenly he just disappears from the face of the earth. Or even worse, you actually go out on a few dates with a guy and you seem to like him a lot, but eventually he just stops returning your calls, texts, and doesn't meet with you in person again. They call this ghosting, and sadly, lots of people do it, both men and women. Why? Because it's not always easy to tell the person face to face that you don't think that things are going to work out. Because some people don't, like, let's just be honest, some people don't take it very well. And a lot of people just try to avoid conflict whenever possible. So they they ghost to avoid confrontation. Ghosting isn't going to stop. So let's just be real about it. So let's talk about 8 reasons why guys do it. And at the end, I'm going to tell you what you want to do if you want to reconnect with a guy who does this with you. So, by the way, my name is Matthew Coast, and welcome to Commitment Connection. Let's go over the 8 different reasons why a guy might disappear and ghost on you. Pull away, disappear, and ghost. So number 1 is bad timing. There's a fairly good chance that a guy might simply ghost you for a miscellaneous reason that has nothing to do with you, but everything to do with bad timing. Remember, you're not always at fault when this happens. Things might come up for him. Something might be a bigger priority in his life where he feels he can't be in a relationship or whatever. And so sometimes the timing just isn't right, even if the guy might be right for you and you guys might be right for each other if circumstances in his life were a little bit different. Reason number two is he never invested in you. And so people value things that they work for and are invested in. And if he never invested in you, or he never had the desire to want to invest in you, and so he never had that kind of buy-in there, then it can be really easy for a guy to completely walk away in that situation. And so you want to make sure that a guy is investing in you from the very beginning. I talk a lot about this. Number 3 is his interest in you was purely physical, and he doesn't want to confront you about that. So sometimes if a guy likes you, but he doesn't want to be with you for a long-term committed relationship, he might only be interested in something that's just purely physical with you. And it's a little bit different with most guys. There are plenty of women out there who just want physical interactions with guys. However, we see this a lot more with guys in our community where, you know, the woman wants something longer term, but the guy just wants something short term. And a lot of women seem not to understand why or how that can happen, because a lot of times if they're not interested in the guy, they're totally not interested in the guy at all. But he might actually just want something physical with you. And if he feels that way and he feels like it's a lot of work in order to hook up with you, he might just end up disappearing. And so what you want to think about this is like he's doing you a favor, because this wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. So number 4 is he's afraid of being emotionally intimate or vulnerable with anyone, and it's not just you. So let's get down to it. You know, if you know for a fact that this guy was into you and then he went cold fast, there definitely was a reason. And oftentimes it's because he feels the need to be intimate and vulnerable, or maybe he feels like he needs to commit, or that you're just this amazing, awesome woman that he wanted to connect with. But in reality, he's kind of afraid of doing that because he's afraid of confronting himself. He's afraid of embarrassing himself. He's afraid of his own needs and wants and desires. And so he doesn't want to open himself up to receiving scrutiny, possibly being embarrassed, or kind of facing some of the fears or some of the past trauma, or some of the things that he learned from his past that taught him that he shouldn't be emotionally intimate with somebody. So whatever the case, he might just like you too much for his own comfort. And so I know that can sound strange, but if he likes you a lot, but he's too scared of himself, he's too scared of a relationship, he's too scared of something serious, he's not in that stage in his life where he's ready to face some of his issues, then he might just disappear altogether. Number 5 is he's self-absorbed, and he literally doesn't realize how bad he is when it comes to this. So sometimes you really do dodge a bullet with guys. So people with, we talk a little bit about this whole thing like classical narcissist personality disorder or personality behaviors, right? Where they're really into themselves. It's a classical definition of it. It's not the MPD definition, but classical narcissistic personality or sociopathic personalities. They often ghost people and dump lovers and betray their friends for no other reason other than complete self-absorption. And this kind of a guy, which there are a lot of women that do this as well, they're usually charming and very talkative at first and really interesting and really interested in you, and they build you up a whole lot. A lot of times they're only aware of people who can help them or serve them or provide something for them. And so you don't want to take it personally when they do that, because you really are dodging a bullet in this case, because you don't want to be in a situation like that. Number 6 is you actually change. So you stop being the self-confident woman that you came across as when you first met him, and then all of a sudden you started coming across as controlling or needy or something like that. And so I know this is more personal, and a lot of women don't want to hear this sometimes, but if you came across to him as you were really confident, and then you got together and all of a sudden you started changing, you started getting really needy, you started doing things where you started chasing him, you started investing a whole lot of him, you put him on a pedestal, and you were really like treating him like he was some kind of, amazing person. You're this little person who feels like you're lucky to be with him. Then it could end up turning into a situation where he feels like you really are lucky to be with him, and that he could do better, and he'll lose attraction for you and lose his desire to move forward and push things towards an actual real committed relationship with you. And that can happen. Sometimes it happens where he kind of slowly starts moving away, right? Especially if you guys are in deep and you're in there and you're like, oh, I love you. And he's like, yeah, I love you too, right? And what ends up happening is he starts moving away further and further and further, changing his attention to something else, and it can end up turning into a problem, which is why I talk about following my system all the time, because it's really, really important that you don't get into a situation like that. So number 7 is the initial impression that he had of you was completely different from the real you. And sometimes this doesn't even have anything to do with you, right? Because a lot of times what happens when we meet people, and it doesn't matter whether it's like a romantic relationship or just friendships or anything like that. People do this a lot of times with celebrities, where they'll go and they will see a celebrity and they think in their mind like, oh my God, this person is perfect, and they have all these amazing traits, and they're just, they're the most amazing person in the entire world. And then they start meeting them and they talk to the celebrity, and they realize that the celebrity puts their pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else, and has their own issues and their own problems and all that kind of stuff. And this actually happens a lot of times with men when they meet a woman, and they are just like head over heels immediately. And you can usually tell this because they start, talking about how they're going to get married, and what your kids' names are going to be like, and how they want to fly around the world with you, and they always want to be with you together. And it's been like a week of you guys knowing each other and talking to each other, but he's, all the way in already, and you're just like, wait a second. And some women get caught up in this, and they buy into it because it feels good. Let's just be honest, right? And next thing you know, what ends up happening is that he starts having reality hit him. His issues start hitting him. The reality of who you are starts hitting him. And it's not the same as the impression that he got when he first met you. And so what ends up happening is he ends up pulling away once he starts finding out and learning about the real you as a real person. And which is totally fine. It's another one of those things where you don't want to change yourself, and you don't want to try to fake it. You want somebody who really appreciates you for the reality of who you are, and not just the fantasy of whatever they had in their mind when they met you. And so this can actually be a blessing as well. Number 8, there is someone else. So lastly, let's just be very honest and admit that sometimes love isn't fair and it can be really competitive, and sometimes it comes down to choices. And if he's dating more than one person, which if he's in the West, there's a pretty good possibility that he's out there dating a whole bunch of people, like a lot of people are, like most people are. And so what ends up happening is he ends up getting his attention pulled by somebody else, and he just decides for whatever reason, or he gets caught up in certain emotions or whatever. And next thing you know, he just phases out all the other options and goes after one woman, and that woman doesn't happen to be you. And that can suck when that happens. But again, don't settle on a guy who only gives you breadcrumbs. You want his full attention, and you want a man that's not distracted by somebody else. So let him go and look for a better quality man. And so there are some things that you can do when a guy pulls away. If he pulls away and he ghosts on you, right? Some women are just like, yeah, you know what, just move on and just go and don't talk to him ever again. And you can do that, right? That's definitely an option if that's something that you want to do. And if you're following my system, it shouldn't be that big of a deal anyway. If you're out and dating and you're following what I'm talking about and the principles that I talk about in my program, you shouldn't be all that caught up on one guy anyway. But let's say that you are, and you're in a situation like this, and you're like, what should I do? Well, there's a few different things that you can do. One is you can kind of test to see what's going on with the guy that ghosted you or disappeared on you or pulled away from you, right? If it's been a few days, you can just send him a text message and just, ask him something, ask him a really innocent question, or just say something where you're thinking about him or something like that, and see if he responds and see how he responds, right? And if it doesn't go well, that's fine, right? You can move on with your life. But if it's one of those things where a lot of guys, if they don't contact a woman, a lot of guys know that if they pull back, even if it's for something legitimate, and they don't contact a woman for a few days, sometimes when they come back, women will attack them and berate them. I've had it done to me a few times in my life, right? And it was totally innocent. I had no idea that they thought I was playing games. They thought I was pulling away. They thought I didn't like them, all kinds of things, right? And I come back and I say hi, and they like freak out on me and attack me. And it was just like, okay, I guess we aren't going to talk anymore. And so what you can do is show him that you're not mad at him, right? Show him that you're not going to attack him or something if he talks to you and contacts you, because right when he starts talking to you again is not the time. If you do want to address that issue and talk about your emotions and how you feel about the whole thing, the time to do it is not when he starts talking to you again. There's a time for it, and it's later on, right? Not when he just starts talking to you, because what that does is it makes him feel like he doesn't want to reach out to you. If you want to have that kind of a conversation, you want to do it in person. That way he's invested, he's there, he's sitting there, you guys are in conversation, and it's a piece of a conversation that you're having and not the entire interaction that you're having. Another way so the testing part is you send them out a message. And if you want a really great, I have a 4-word message that you can send a guy if you're really interested in sending a message to a guy and finding out what's going on and kind of giving him a shock to his system and making him go, okay, yeah, you know what, I'm going to contact her. Or, you're right. We've had guys that have apologized and been like, hey, I'm really sorry. I was really busy, and let me make it up to you and take you out on a date, or, do whatever. Right. And so